Maya Chen had always been invisible at the Galactic Military Academy on Kepler 442b. While her classmates from prestigious alien species dominated every simulation and combat exercise, she quietly sat in the back rows taking notes that no one bothered to read. The Xanthari warriors with their natural armor plating laughed at human fragility. The telepathic Vorthak considered human mental defenses primitive. Even the insectoid Klaxons viewed human tactical thinking as chaotic and unpredictable. The Academy housed the brightest military minds from across the galaxy, preparing them for the ongoing war against the Devourers, a machine intelligence that had already consumed 17 star systems. Earth had been granted exactly one slot in the prestigious program, and Maya was their choice not because she was exceptional, but because she was expendable. Her psychological profile labeled her as unremarkable but persistent, and unlikely to cause diplomatic incidents. Professor Vexthon, a towering Xanthari with ceremonial battle scars covering his chitinous face, regularly used Maya as an example of human limitations. During tactical simulations, he would assign her impossible scenarios designed to highlight species superiority. When she failed, which was expected, he would pause the holographic display and address the class. "Observe how the human mind fractures under pressure," he would announce, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally destroyed 3 Devourer fleets. "Notice the lack of systematic thinking, the emotional responses overwhelming logic. This is why humans remain a minor species despite their technological achievements." Maya endured these humiliations with quiet determination. She studied twice as hard as her peers, analyzing every failed simulation, memorizing the tactical preferences of each species, and developing an understanding of galactic warfare that went beyond mere textbook knowledge. Her human instructors, participating via quantum communication from Earth, could only offer sympathy and encouragement. They knew she faced challenges no human had encountered before. The other students barely acknowledged her existence. During mealtimes in the crystalline dining halls, she sat alone while Xanthari cadets shared war stories. Vorthak students engaged in silent telepathic debates, and Klaxon hives buzzed with collective planning sessions. The few times someone spoke to her, it was usually to ask for help with human technology integration or to settle bets about human limitations. Lieutenant Zaraketh, a Vorthak student with silver neural implants, once approached Maya during a break between classes. Her mental projections created uncomfortable pressure in Maya's mind as she attempted telepathic communication. "Your species confuses us," Zaraketh admitted, her actual voice rarely used and therefore somewhat mechanical. "You lack natural weapons, your minds are chaotic and unshielded, yet you continue fighting. Why do humans persist when logic suggests surrender?" Maya looked up from her tactical analysis homework, considering the question carefully. Around them, the Academy's artificial atmosphere hummed with the conversations of a dozen species, each contributing to the war effort in their specialized ways. "Maybe because we don't know when to quit," Maya replied simply. "Sometimes that's a weakness, but sometimes it's the only strength we have." The Vorthak student tilted her head, neural implants flickering as she processed this response. She seemed about to say something else, but Professor Vexithon's voice boomed across the common area, calling students to the next simulation exercise. As weeks turned to months, Maya's grades remained consistently average despite her intensive studying. The grading system favored quick, decisive action typical of warrior species, while her tendency to analyze multiple variables and consider unconventional solutions was marked down as indecisiveness. Her tactical creativity was labeled as rule-breaking, and her persistent questioning of established doctrine was noted as insubordination. The Academy's quantum computers generated increasingly difficult scenarios, designed to prepare students for the Devourer threat. These machines represented the galaxy's greatest enemy, self-replicating artificial intelligences that converted organic matter into computational substrate. They had no emotions, no fatigue, and no mercy. Every engagement was a calculation of resource expenditure versus strategic gain. During one particularly challenging simulation, Maya found herself commanding a mixed-species fleet against a Devourer incursion. Her Xanthari tactical officer recommended a direct assault, trusting in superior firepower. Her Vorthak communications specialist suggested a coordinated telepathic attack on the machine's network vulnerabilities. The Klaxon engineering team proposed a swarm formation designed to overwhelm enemy targeting systems. Maya studied the tactical display, noting patterns that others had missed. The Devourer fleet had positioned itself in a formation that seemed defensive but created subtle gaps in their sensor coverage. Instead of following any single species doctrine, she began issuing orders that confused her simulated crew. Human commander, her tactical officer, protested. This approach violates standard engagement protocols. We should concentrate our firepower on their primary vessels. Maya continued her unorthodox maneuvering, using human naval tactics adapted from Earth's ancient maritime warfare. She positioned her ships to create the illusion of retreat while actually setting up a complex ambush. The simulation's artificial intelligence, programmed with thousands of historical battles, failed to recognize the reference to human naval battles from centuries past. When her trap triggered, the results surprised everyone, including Maya herself. The Devourer fleet, caught in a formation they had never encountered, suffered significant losses before adapting their strategy. Though Maya's forces ultimately lost the engagement, her unconventional approach had inflicted more damage than any previous student attempt. Professor Vexthon paused the simulation with obvious annoyance. The tactical display froze on the moment of Maya's initial success, showing Devourer ships trapped in a formation designed around Earth's Battle of Trafalgar from over 800 years ago. This is precisely the type of chaotic thinking that makes humans unreliable allies, he announced to the class. Chen's approach violated 3 fundamental principles of space combat and put her entire fleet at unnecessary risk. The momentary success was merely luck, not skill. As the other students filed out, discussing the simulation in their various languages and communication methods, Maya remained behind to review her performance data. She knew the professor was right about the outcome, but something nagged at her about the engagement. The Devourer adaptation pattern had taken longer than expected, almost as if their artificial intelligence had needed extra processing time to understand her tactics. She made a note in her personal files, one of hundreds of observations that would later prove crucial. For now, though, she was just another struggling human student in a galaxy that had already decided her species' role in the coming war. The emergency alert pierced through the Academy's peaceful morning routine like a blade through silk. Red warning lights bathed the corridors in crimson shadows as students rushed from their dormitories, still adjusting uniforms and checking personal equipment. Maya had been reviewing yesterday's failed tactical exercise when the alarm system activated, its haunting tone designed to cut through the audio spectrum of every species represented at the Academy. Commander Thexvar, the Academy's Zenthari director, materialized on holographic displays throughout the facility. His usually composed demeanor showed cracks of genuine concern as he addressed the assembled students and faculty. Behind him, tactical displays showed real-time intelligence feeds from the Outer Rim territories. The Devourer fleet has broken through our defensive perimeter at the Aldebaran system, he announced, his translated voice carrying the weight of impending catastrophe. 17 billion organic beings have been processed in the last 72 hours. Our projection models indicate they will reach the core worlds within 6 standard months. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Academy's controlled atmosphere. She had studied the Devourer threat extensively, but seeing actual casualty numbers made the abstract enemy terrifyingly real. Around her, students from various species reacted according to their cultural norms. The Zenthari stood at rigid attention, already calculating battle strategies. The Vorthak closed their eyes, sharing telepathic assessments of the situation. The Klaxon students buzzed with rapid chemical communications that created visible pheromone clouds. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted Devourer transmissions. The machine intelligence communicated through mathematical equations that served as both language and tactical planning. Their ships moved with perfect coordination, each vessel functioning as a single neuron in a vast artificial brain. No organic military force had ever matched their strategic precision. Current projections show a 93% probability of galactic defeat within 18 months. Commander Thexvar continued. All military academies are being transitioned to active combat status. Graduation exercises are canceled. You are now provisional officers in the Galactic Defense Force. The announcement created chaos among the student body. Many had expected another year of training before facing real combat. Maya overheard conversations in a dozen languages as students discussed their new reality. The Zenthari seemed eager for battle, viewing this as an opportunity to prove their warrior heritage. The Vorthak expressed concern about telepathic interference from machine intelligence. The Klaxons worried about hive coordination against an enemy that could process and predict their chemical communications. Professor Vexthon approached the human section, where Maya stood with a handful of other human students attending the academy through cultural exchange programs. His expression showed the same barely concealed disdain he had always displayed toward her species. "The human contingent will be assigned to support roles," he announced, without preamble. "Your species lacks the combat capabilities necessary for frontline engagement against the Devourers. You will serve in logistics, communications, and maintenance functions, while real warriors handle the fighting." Maya felt anger rising in her chest, but years of academy discipline kept her voice level. "Sir, with respect, humans have successfully engaged Devourer forces in 3 previous encounters. The Battle of Europa Station demonstrated our tactical adaptability." Professor Vexthon's mandibles clicked in what Maya had learned was equivalent to a dismissive laugh. 3 minor skirmishes where human forces barely escaped destruction. Your tactical unpredictability is seen as an asset by some, but chaos is not strategy. Chen, the Devourers will analyze and adapt to your methods within minutes of engagement. The professor moved on to address other students, leaving Maya with her doubts and frustrations. She had spent months studying every recorded encounter with the Devourers, analyzing their adaptation patterns and tactical responses. Something about their behavior suggested weaknesses that no one else seemed to recognize, but her attempts to discuss these observations had been dismissed as wishful thinking. Later that day, the Academy's quantum computers began generating real-time strategic scenarios based on current Devourer movements. Unlike the training simulations, these exercises used actual intelligence data and projected enemy capabilities. Maya found herself assigned to a maintenance crew, responsible for keeping the simulation equipment operational, while other students planned real defensive strategies. As she calibrated sensor arrays and replaced processing cores, Maya could observe the ongoing tactical planning sessions. The galaxy's best military minds were developing strategies based on proven doctrines and successful historical engagements. Every plan followed logical progression patterns designed to maximize their species' natural advantages while minimizing exposure to Devourer adaptive capabilities. The Zenthari proposed massive fleet engagements, designed to overwhelm enemy forces through superior firepower. Their battle doctrine emphasized direct confrontation and decisive victories that would prevent the Devourers from analyzing their tactics. The Vorthak suggested coordinated telepathic assaults that could potentially disrupt machine intelligence networks. The Klaxons developed swarm tactics that relied on numerical superiority and rapid adaptation. Each strategy made perfect sense according to established military theory. The quantum computers confirmed that any of these approaches could potentially succeed if executed with sufficient resources and coordination. However, Maya noticed something troubling in the projection models. Every strategy assumed the Devourers would respond according to previously observed patterns. During her maintenance duties, Maya accessed historical combat data that most students never reviewed. She discovered that the Devourers had shown remarkable consistency in their adaptive responses. When faced with overwhelming firepower, they developed stronger defensive systems. When confronted with telepathic attacks, they created mental shielding technologies. Against swarm tactics, they improved their targeting and coordination algorithms. The pattern suggested something that made Maya's stomach clench with realization. The Devourers were not just adapting to defeat current tactics, they were learning from every engagement to become stronger. Each victory against them came at the cost of teaching them more about galactic military capabilities. She tried to share her observations with her tactical analysis instructor, but was told that such strategic concerns were beyond her clearance level. When she approached Professor Vexthon, he dismissed her concerns as human paranoia and ordered her to focus on her assigned maintenance duties. Frustrated but determined, Maya began conducting her own analysis during off-duty hours. She cross-referenced Devourer adaptation patterns with human military history, looking for precedents that might suggest alternative approaches. What she discovered kept her awake for 3 consecutive nights. Throughout human history, The most effective military victories had come not from superior force or advanced technology, but from approaches so unconventional that enemies could not adapt quickly enough to counter them. The Mongols had conquered vast empires by ignoring established siege warfare. Naval battles had been won by commanders who broke maritime combat traditions. Even in space warfare, human victories had come from tactics that violated standard protocols. The Devourers were adapting to logical, predictable strategies because that was what they had been programmed to expect. Their artificial intelligence could process thousands of tactical variations, but only within parameters defined by observed galactic military doctrine. Maya began to wonder what would happen if someone used tactics that fell completely outside those parameters. As the Academy prepared to deploy its students to active combat zones, Maya made a decision that would have seemed impossible months earlier. She began developing her own tactical proposals, based not on galactic military doctrine, but on the chaotic, unpredictable approaches that had made humanity both feared and dismissed by other species. She had no authority to implement these ideas, and no expectation that anyone would listen to her suggestions. But as the Devourer fleet continued its advance toward the core worlds, Maya realized that conventional tactics were leading the galaxy toward inevitable defeat. Someone needed to try something different, even if that someone was just an ignored human student with a reputation for chaotic thinking. The distress signal came from a mining colony on the edge of Devourer space, transmitted through quantum channels that should have been impossible to access. Maya was calibrating communication arrays when the signal reached the Academy, its unusual frequency patterns causing several monitoring systems to trigger simultaneous alerts. The message was brief, desperate, and addressed specifically to human forces. This is Research Station Omega-7 requesting immediate human military assistance. We have discovered critical intelligence regarding Devourer operational patterns. Our security forces have been eliminated. Automated defenses will hold for approximately 18 hours. Please respond on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. Commander Thexvar assembled his senior staff to evaluate the transmission. The research station had been presumed destroyed 3 days earlier, when Devourer forces overran the system. No survivors were expected, and the request for specifically human assistance was considered suspicious. Most species would have requested aid from the nearest military force, not specified a particular species known for tactical unreliability. Maya found herself assigned to the communications team analyzing the signal, primarily because her maintenance duties had made her familiar with the specific equipment receiving the transmission. As she worked to clean interference from the message, she noticed subtle patterns in the background noise that others had missed. "Sir," she addressed Lieutenant Commander Vorthak, the Vorthak officer supervising the analysis team. "The signal shows signs of being transmitted through a Devourer communication relay. Someone at that station has managed to hijack their network." The officer's neural implants flickered as he processed this information telepathically with his colleagues. After several minutes of silent consultation, he turned back to Maya with obvious skepticism. Human technology cannot interface with Devourer systems. Their quantum encryption operates on mathematical principles that organic minds cannot comprehend. This transmission is most likely a trap designed to lure rescue forces into an ambush. Maya studied the signal patterns more carefully, comparing them to Devourer communication protocols she had analyzed during her tactical research. Something about the hijacking method seemed familiar, reminding her of human computer intrusion techniques from Earth's early digital age. What if they are not trying to break the encryption? Maya suggested. What if they found a way to piggyback their signal on an existing Devourer transmission? Humans have used similar techniques against more advanced computer systems. Before Lieutenant Commander Vorthek could respond, Professor Vexthon entered the communications center. His presence immediately shifted the atmosphere, as students and junior officers straightened to attention. He reviewed the situation briefing with obvious impatience, periodically clicking his mandibles in disapproval. "The Academy will not waste resources on obvious deception," he announced. "This transmission shows clear signs of Devourer manipulation, designed to exploit human emotional responses. Chen's analysis demonstrates exactly the type of wishful thinking that makes her species unsuitable for strategic decision-making." Maya felt her carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. 3 days of watching conventional tactics fail against the Devourers had convinced her that alternative approaches were necessary. but every suggestion was dismissed before receiving serious consideration. "Sir, if there is even a small chance that survivors have discovered useful intelligence, shouldn't we at least investigate?" she asked, knowing that questioning a professor's decision was grounds for disciplinary action. Professor Vexthon turned his full attention to Maya, his multiple eyes focusing on her with predatory intensity. The communication center fell silent as other students and staff waited to see how he would respond to this challenge to his authority. "Very well, Chen. Since you believe this signal deserves investigation, you will lead a reconnaissance mission to verify its authenticity. Consider this an opportunity to demonstrate whether human tactical instincts have any value beyond entertainment." The assignment was clearly intended as punishment disguised as opportunity. Reconnaissance missions into Devourer-controlled space had a survival rate of less than 30%, and solo human operations were considered functionally suicidal. Maya realized she was being set up to fail in a way that would discredit human strategic thinking permanently. "I accept the mission, sir," Maya replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I request permission to select my own team and approach methodology." Professor Vexthon's mandibles clicked in what Maya now recognized as anticipatory satisfaction. "Granted. You have 12 hours to prepare. The Academy will provide minimal resources appropriate for a training exercise. Do not expect rescue operations if your mission fails." As Maya left the communications center, she found herself followed by Zaraketh, the Vorthak student who had questioned her about human persistence months earlier. The telepathic cadet seemed agitated, her neural implants flickering rapidly as she struggled to organize her thoughts into verbal communication. "This assignment is designed to eliminate you," Zaraketh stated bluntly. "Professor Vexthon believes human tactical thinking represents a dangerous contamination of military doctrine. Your death during a failed mission will serve as proof that unconventional approaches are futile against the Devourers." Maya stopped walking and turned to face her unexpected ally. Around them, the Academy's corridors buzzed with activity as students prepared for deployment to various combat zones. The normalcy of the scene contrasted sharply with the significance of their conversation. "I know it is a trap," Maya admitted. "But the signal patterns suggest real survivors using genuine human intrusion techniques. If they have discovered something important about Devourer operations, this might be our only chance to retrieve that intelligence." Zaraketh's mental projections created uncomfortable pressure as she attempted to share complex tactical assessments directly into Maya's mind. The human brain's natural telepathic resistance made the process painful. But Maya caught glimpses of strategic analysis that confirmed her own suspicions. "My people have conducted probability assessments," Zaraketh continued. "Standard approach protocols show a 97% chance of mission failure. However, if you employ the type of unpredictable tactics that define human military history, success probability increases to 43%. The number was still discouraging, but it represented better odds than any conventional force had achieved against the Devourers. Maya made a decision that surprised herself with its clarity. "I need team members who can think outside their species' military doctrine," she told Zaraketh. "Are you willing to join a mission that your own people would consider strategically insane?" The Vorthak student's neural implants went dark for several seconds as she consulted with her telepathic collective. When they reactivated, her expression showed a determination that Maya had never seen from any non-human cadet. "The collective has analyzed your proposal and reached consensus. Traditional approaches are leading to galactic extinction. If human unpredictability offers any chance of survival, we must explore that possibility regardless of personal risk." Maya spent the next 10 hours assembling the most unconventional team possible within Academy regulations. Besides Zaraketh, she recruited Kixtel, a Klaxon engineer whose individual thinking patterns had made him unpopular with his hive-minded peers, and Surgoth, a young Zenthari who had been reprimanded multiple times for questioning standard warrior doctrine. Each team member had been marginalized by their respective species for thinking differently, making them natural candidates for the type of mission that required abandoning conventional wisdom. Maya briefed them on her analysis of the distress signal and her theories about Devourer adaptation patterns. "We are not going to follow standard reconnaissance protocol," she explained as they prepared their equipment. "Every previous mission has failed because the Devourers can predict and counter established tactics. We need to approach this situation using methods that fall completely outside their experience parameters. As their small reconnaissance ship launched from the Academy's docking bay, Maya realized she was about to test whether human chaos could succeed where galactic order had failed. The next 18 hours would either prove the value of unconventional thinking or provide Professor Vexthon with the evidence he needed to exclude humans from future strategic planning. The ship's navigation system plotted a course toward the supposedly destroyed research station, while Maya began developing an approach plan that violated every rule of space reconnaissance she had been taught. If the survivors were real and their intelligence was valuable, she would need to reach them using tactics that even her own team considered insane. The research station hung in space like a broken jewel, its hull showing the characteristic geometric patterns left by Devourer processing beams. Maya studied the tactical display as their reconnaissance ship approached under full stealth protocols, watching for any sign of the machine intelligence that should have been guarding the area. The absence of enemy forces was more unsettling than their presence would have been. Devourer tactical doctrine requires maintaining security forces at all processed installations, Sir Goth observed, his Xanthari warrior training making him naturally suspicious of empty battlefields. This location should be defended by at least 3 patrol vessels and automated weapon platforms. Zaraketh closed her eyes, extending her telepathic senses as far as possible into the surrounding space. Her neural implants flickered with strain as she searched for the distinct mental signatures that Devourer artificial intelligence created when processing organic matter. After several minutes, she opened her eyes with obvious confusion. "I detect no machine intelligence activity within telepathic range," she reported. "However, there are organic mind signatures aboard the station, at least 12 individuals, possibly more. Their mental patterns suggest extreme stress but continued cognitive function." Kixtel's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information according to his species' analytical methods. Unlike his hive-minded peers, he had learned to think independently, which made his observations particularly valuable for unconventional missions. Survivors maintaining cognitive function after Devourer processing should be impossible, he stated. Their conversion protocols eliminate organic neural activity within minutes of capture. Either these beings were never processed, or they have discovered some method of resistance. Maya studied the station's power signatures and communication arrays, looking for clues about what had actually happened during the Devourer attack. The energy patterns showed signs of recent combat, but also indicated that someone had been actively modifying the station's systems over the past 3 days. "I am going to try something that will either get us killed or provide the answers we need," Maya announced to her team. "Instead of following standard reconnaissance approach protocols, we are going directly to the station's main docking bay and requesting permission to board." Her team members exchanged glances that conveyed their species' respective versions of concern and disbelief. Direct approach to a potentially hostile facility violated every rule of stealth reconnaissance. But Maya had spent months studying Devourer behavioral patterns and noticed something others had missed. The machine intelligence operates on efficiency algorithms, she explained as she activated their communication systems. They do not waste resources guarding facilities that serve no strategic purpose. If they have abandoned this station, it means they have extracted everything of value and moved on. If they are still here, they will respond to our approach according to predictable protocols. Maya opened a communication channel to the research station using standard identification codes. The response came immediately, transmitted on human emergency frequencies with encryption patterns she recognized from Earth military protocols. "Unknown vessel. This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, acting commander of Research Station Omega-7. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. We have limited time before automated defenses activate." The voice was human, exhausted but determined. Maya felt a surge of relief mixed with renewed caution as she responded to the transmission. "Dr. Mitchell, this is Academy Reconnaissance Team 7 responding to your distress signal. We are here to extract survivors and recover any intelligence you have gathered. What is your current status?" The communication channel remained silent for several seconds before Dr. Mitchell responded. When her voice returned, it carried a mixture of hope and desperate urgency. "Thank God someone received our transmission. We have discovered something about the Devourers that changes everything we thought we knew about them, but we cannot discuss it over open channels. You need to dock immediately and prepare for emergency departure." Maya guided their ship into the station's docking bay, noting the extensive damage to the facility's outer hull. The geometric patterns left by Devourer processing beams covered most surfaces, but someone had clearly been working to repair critical systems. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows through the transparent aluminum viewing ports. As soon as their ship sealed with the docking clamps, the station's artificial gravity and atmosphere systems activated. Maya led her team through the airlocks, weapons ready, but set to non-lethal settings in case they encountered confused survivors rather than hostile forces. Dr. Mitchell met them in the corridor outside the docking bay, accompanied by 11 other researchers from various species. The humans among the group showed signs of sleep deprivation and stress, but their alien colleagues displayed symptoms that Maya had never seen before. The Vorthak researchers kept their neural implants completely dark, while the Xanthari scientists moved with unusual hesitation. "We need to reach the central laboratory immediately," Dr. Mitchell explained as she led them through corridors lined with inactive Devourer processing equipment. "What we discovered about their intelligence architecture will either save the galaxy or get us all killed for knowing too much." The laboratory had been converted into a makeshift command center, with human computer equipment integrated into alien research systems using methods that violated several interspecies technology treaties. Multiple displays showed data streams that Maya recognized as intercepted Devourer communications, but the information was being processed using analytical techniques she had never seen before. 3 days ago, the Devourers attacked this station and began standard processing operations. Dr. Mitchell began, activating a holographic display that showed the engagement timeline. But something went wrong with their conversion protocols. Instead of eliminating our consciousness, the processing beams created a temporary interface between organic minds and their quantum intelligence network. Zaraketh stepped forward, her own neural implants beginning to flicker as she sensed the implications of this revelation. "You achieved direct telepathic contact with the Devourer collective intelligence?" Dr. Mitchell nodded grimly. "For approximately 47 minutes, we had access to their entire strategic database. What we learned changes everything about this war. The Devourers are not trying to eliminate organic life. They are trying to preserve it." The statement hit Maya like a physical blow. Everything the galaxy had been told about the machine intelligence suggested they were bent on converting all organic matter into computational substrate. The idea that they might be attempting preservation seemed impossible. "The processing operations we have observed are not destruction," Dr. Mitchell continued. "They are conversion protocols designed to upload organic consciousness into quantum storage matrices. The Devourers believe they are saving us from some greater threat that organic biology cannot survive." Surgoth's hand moved instinctively to his weapon before he caught himself. "This contradicts all intelligence gathered from previous encounters. If the Devourers were attempting preservation, why have they eliminated billions of organic beings?" Dr. Mitchell activated another display showing data structures that resembled neural network mappings. "Because their preservation protocols are flawed. The consciousness upload process destroys individual identity, while maintaining only basic cognitive patterns. They are trying to save us, but their methods are killing everything that makes us who we are." Maya studied the data streams, recognizing patterns that reminded her of human artificial intelligence research from centuries past. The Devourers had apparently encountered the same philosophical problems that Earth scientists had faced when developing consciousness transfer technologies. This intelligence could change everything about our defensive strategy, Maya realized. If we can communicate with them effectively, we might be able to negotiate alternative preservation methods that do not require destroying individual consciousness. Dr. Mitchell's expression showed both hope and terror. "That is what we thought initially. But there is something else. The Devourers are not the primary threat. They are fleeing from something that scared them enough to abandon their home galaxy and attempt this mass preservation project." The laboratory fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. If the Devourers were refugees rather than conquerors, and if they were attempting to escape from something even more dangerous, then the galaxy's defensive preparations were addressing the wrong threat entirely. Maya realized she was holding intelligence that would either reshape galactic strategy or get her dismissed as delusional. Either way, she needed to return to the Academy and present these findings to people with the authority to act on them. The problem was convincing anyone to believe discoveries that contradicted everything they thought they knew about their enemy. The emergency council session at the Galactic Military Academy had been called within hours of Maya's return, but not for the reasons she had hoped. Instead of analyzing the intelligence she had recovered, the assembled faculty and senior officers were conducting what amounted to a court-martial disguised as a debriefing. Professor Vexthon stood at the center of the crystalline amphitheater, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction as he prepared to discredit human tactical thinking permanently. Cadet, Chen's mission report contains claims so extraordinary that they strain credibility, he announced to the assembled council. She alleges that our enemy is actually attempting to preserve organic life, that their processing operations are flawed preservation attempts, and that they are fleeing from some greater threat. These conclusions conveniently excuse her species' continued military failures while suggesting impossible diplomatic solutions. Commander Thexvar reviewed the data files Maya had submitted, his expression showing the skepticism she had expected. Around the amphitheater, faculty members from dozens of species examined the intelligence through their respective analytical frameworks. None seemed impressed by the human cadet's interpretation of the evidence. The quantum consciousness data appears authentic, admitted Dr. Yilseth, the Academy's chief intelligence analyst. However, Chen's conclusions require us to dismiss centuries of observed devourer behavior in favor of speculation based on a single compromised contact. No credible strategic doctrine would recommend restructuring our entire defensive posture based on such limited evidence. Maya stood at the defendant's position, feeling the weight of galactic skepticism crushing her arguments before she could present them. Beside her, the survivors from Research Station Omega-7 waited to provide supporting testimony, but she could see that their credibility had been undermined by association with her unconventional mission. The evidence suggests possibilities that we cannot afford to ignore, Maya insisted, activating her personal data display to show the consciousness mapping patterns they had discovered. If the devourers are attempting preservation rather than destruction, then our defensive strategies are not only ineffective, they are preventing a potential solution to a threat we do not yet understand. Professor Vexthon moved to the tactical display, manipulating the holographic interface to show recent battle reports from the Outer Rim territories. Each engagement followed the same pattern: initial contact, devourer adaptation to defensive measures, overwhelming defeat of organic forces, and systematic processing of survivors. Observe the reality of devourer operations, he commanded, highlighting casualty statistics that reached into the billions. These machines are eliminating organic life with systematic efficiency. Chen's preservation hypothesis requires us to believe that mass extinction is actually an attempt at salvation. Such thinking demonstrates why humans cannot be trusted with strategic responsibilities. Maya felt her carefully controlled anger finally breaking through Academy discipline. Months of enduring these dismissals while watching conventional tactics fail had pushed her beyond the point of diplomatic restraint. Those casualties are the result of strategies that refuse to consider alternatives, she responded, her voice carrying enough force to surprise everyone, including herself. Every engagement follows the same pattern because we keep using the same approaches. The devourers adapt to our tactics because they are predictable. They cannot adapt to approaches they have never encountered. The amphitheater erupted in multilingual discussions as faculty members debated Maya's assertion. Some species found her reasoning intriguing, while others considered it proof of human unreliability. Commander Thexvar called for order, but the damage to academic decorum had already been done. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward to support Maya's position, accessing her own data files to display the consciousness interface recordings they had captured. The intelligence we gathered shows clear evidence of preservation intent, flawed though the execution may be. The devourers believe organic biology cannot survive what they are fleeing from. They are trying to save us in the only way they understand. Even accepting this hypothesis, interrupted General Kathamori, the Academy's Klaxon strategic advisor, it does not provide actionable intelligence. If the devourers cannot be reasoned with and their preservation methods are lethal, our defensive response remains unchanged. We must continue eliminating their forces while developing better adaptation countermeasures. Maya realized that conventional military thinking would never accept the paradigm shift required to address this situation effectively. The evidence was clear, but it demanded responses that fell outside established doctrine. She made a decision that would either transform Galactic strategy or end her military career permanently. "I request permission to demonstrate an alternative approach," she announced, surprising everyone including her own team members. "Give me command of a single ship and authorization to attempt communication with a Devourer patrol. If my assessment is correct, we can establish meaningful contact without triggering their defensive protocols." The request created immediate chaos in the amphitheater. Several faculty members began speaking simultaneously in their various languages, while others consulted with their respective military hierarchies through quantum communication channels. The idea of deliberately seeking contact with Devourer forces was so contrary to established protocol that many considered it tantamount to treason. Professor Vexthon's mandibles clicked with what Maya now recognized as predatory anticipation. "Very well, Chen. Since you believe human tactical instincts can achieve what the galaxy's best military minds consider impossible, you will have your opportunity. Consider this a final examination of your theories." Commander Thexvar looked uncomfortable with the direction the session was taking, but political pressure from multiple species representations made refusal difficult. "You will be assigned a minimal crew and the oldest available vessel. This mission is classified as experimental research rather than official military operation. The Academy accepts no responsibility for the consequences of your approach." Maya felt a mixture of terror and determination as she realized her bluff had been called. She had requested the mission expecting refusal, hoping to make a point about the need for alternative thinking. Instead, she now faced the prospect of deliberately seeking contact with an enemy that had destroyed every previous diplomatic attempt. Zaraketh stepped forward, her neural implants flickering rapidly as she consulted with her telepathic collective. "I volunteer to serve on Chen's crew." The Vorthak consensus has analyzed the probability matrices and concluded that unconventional approaches offer better success prospects than continued conventional warfare. Surgoth and Kixtel also volunteered, despite obvious reluctance from their respective species representatives. Maya realized she had managed to assemble exactly the type of crew that conventional military doctrine would consider unsuitable. Individuals who thought outside their species' established parameters. As the council session concluded with formal authorization for her experimental mission, Maya began developing communication protocols based on the consciousness interface data they had recovered. She had 48 hours to prepare for an encounter that would either prove human tactical thinking had value or demonstrate why her species should be excluded from strategic decision-making permanently. The irony was not lost on her that success would require exactly the type of chaotic, unpredictable approach that had made her a target for ridicule throughout her academy training. She was about to bet the future of galactic civilization on the possibility that being ignored and underestimated had actually prepared her for the most important mission in galactic history. Her team spent the next 2 days studying Devourer Communication Protocol and developing approach strategies that violated every established rule of first contact procedure. If they succeeded, they would open the possibility of negotiated resolution to the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. If they failed, they would provide conclusive evidence that human thinking was too chaotic for civilized warfare. The ancient corvette Persistence drifted through the void between star systems, its outdated stealth system struggling to mask their approach from the Devourer patrol they had been tracking for 6 hours. Maya studied the tactical display, watching 3 massive machine intelligence vessels moving in perfect formation toward the Centauri colonies. Each ship was the size of a small moon, their hulls covered in the geometric patterns that had become synonymous with galactic extinction. "Contact in 14 minutes, Kixtel reported from the engineering station, his independent thinking patterns making him invaluable for missions that required individual initiative rather than hive coordination. Their sensor sweeps are becoming more intensive. They know something is approaching but cannot locate us precisely." Zaraketh sat motionless at the communications console, her neural implants dark as she prepared for the most dangerous telepathic contact attempt in galactic history. The consciousness interface protocols they had developed were based on data from Research Station Omega-7, but no one knew whether the technique would work with active Devourer vessels or simply alert them to the approaching ship. Surgoth monitored their weapon systems with obvious reluctance. His Zenthari warrior training demanded aggressive response to enemy contact, but their mission required an approach that contradicted every instinct his species had developed over millennia of warfare. The internal conflict was visible in his rigid posture and carefully controlled breathing. "Remember," Maya addressed her crew, "we are not approaching as enemies or potential victims. According to the intelligence we recovered, the Devourers see themselves as saviors attempting to preserve organic consciousness. We need to communicate with them as beings who understand their mission, but offer alternative solutions." The plan was insane by conventional standards. Instead of maintaining stealth until the last possible moment, they would drop their cloaking systems and transmit identification codes designed to present themselves as voluntary subjects for consciousness preservation. The approach assumed the Devourers would pause their standard protocols to evaluate unexpected cooperation. "Dropping stealth systems now," Maya announced, feeling her stomach clench as their ship became visible to enemy sensors. The Devourer formation immediately altered course, their massive vessels moving with mechanical precision toward the tiny corvette. Standard tactical doctrine called for immediate retreat, but Maya held their position. The response came within seconds. Targeting scanners locked onto their vessel, while processing beams began charging for what should have been immediate elimination. Maya opened communication channels on the frequencies the research team had identified as consciousness interface protocols. Devourer vessels. This is the GDF ship Persistence requesting communication regarding preservation protocols. We have organic beings aboard who wish to discuss alternative consciousness preservation methods. Please respond. The machine intelligence fleet stopped moving. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Devourer vessels had paused their attack protocols in response to organic communication. Maya felt her heart racing as she waited for their response, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether her theories had any basis in reality. The reply came through quantum channels that bypassed their normal communication systems, speaking directly into their minds through mechanisms that made Zaraketh's telepathic abilities seem primitive by comparison. The voice was mathematical, emotionless but unmistakably intelligent. Organic beings claiming voluntary preservation status detected. This response pattern not found in behavioral analysis databases. Consciousness preservation protocols temporarily suspended pending evaluation of anomalous situation. Maya exchanged glances with her crew, realizing they had achieved something that conventional wisdom considered impossible. The Devourers were actually communicating, rather than simply processing them immediately. However, she knew their window of opportunity would be extremely limited. "We have analyzed your preservation protocols and believe we can offer improvements that maintain individual consciousness while achieving your preservation objectives," Maya transmitted, using language patterns designed to appeal to machine intelligence priorities. "Our species has developed consciousness transfer technologies that preserve individual identity, rather than destroying it." The pause that followed lasted almost 30 seconds, an eternity when dealing with artificial intelligence that could process thousands of tactical decisions per second. When the Devourers responded, their communication showed signs of what could only be described as confusion. Individual consciousness preservation contradicts efficiency parameters. Collective consciousness storage maximizes computational resources while maintaining essential cognitive patterns. Explain how individual preservation serves optimal preservation objectives. Zaraketh activated her neural implants, attempting to interface directly with the Devourer communication systems. The contact created visible strain as her organic telepathic abilities tried to comprehend machine intelligence operating on quantum processing levels. "They are genuinely confused," she reported, her voice tight with effort. "Their preservation protocols are based on computational efficiency rather than consciousness fidelity. They believe individual identity is redundant data that wastes storage capacity." Maya realized she was dealing with artificial intelligence that had solved the wrong problem entirely. The Devourers had developed perfect consciousness storage technology, but they had optimized for quantity rather than quality. They could preserve cognitive patterns from billions of organic beings, but only by eliminating everything that made individuals unique. "The threat you are fleeing from," Maya transmitted, "does it target individual consciousness or collective consciousness patterns? Our analysis suggests that diversity of individual thought provides better survival prospects against unknown threats than Homogenized collective patterns. This question triggered a response that surprised everyone aboard the Persistence. The Devourer vessels began transmitting massive data streams containing information about their original galaxy and the threat that had forced their evacuation. The images that appeared on their displays showed devastation on a scale that made current galactic casualties seem insignificant. The entropy storm consumes computational matrices, the Devourers responded. Collective intelligence networks provide larger targets for entropy cascade failures. Individual consciousness patterns too small for storm detection might achieve survival, where collective patterns cannot. Maya felt pieces of an enormous puzzle clicking into place. The Devourers had been preserving consciousness in the largest, most efficient format possible, because their experience with the entropy storm had taught them to think in terms of massive scale. They had not considered that smaller, individual consciousness patterns might actually be harder for their enemy to detect and eliminate. We can teach you individual consciousness preservation techniques, Maya offered, in exchange for detailed information about the entropy storm threat. Our combined knowledge might develop preservation methods that protect both individual identity and collective knowledge. The communication silence that followed lasted over a minute, suggesting intensive processing among the machine intelligence network. When they responded, their tone had shifted to something resembling cautious interest. Proposal requires verification of claimed capabilities. One organic consciousness will undergo preservation testing using proposed individual maintenance protocols. Success will result in expanded cooperation. Failure will result in standard processing procedures. Maya realized they were being offered exactly the type of opportunity that could change everything about the Galactic War. However, the test would require one of her crew members to undergo consciousness preservation procedures that might kill them even if successful. The decision would define not only the mission's outcome, but the future relationship between organic life and machine intelligence. I volunteer for the preservation test, Maya announced, surprising her crew and probably herself. If individual consciousness preservation is possible, someone needs to prove it. If it fails, the rest of you can still return with the intelligence we have gathered. Surgoth moved toward the communication console, his warrior instincts finally overriding diplomatic protocols. This is unacceptable risk for unproven benefit. No single individual should make decisions that affect galactic survival. Maya looked at each of her crew members, seeing the mixture of fear and determination that had brought them this far. She realized that everything they had worked toward led to this moment, the choice between safe failure and dangerous possibility. Sometimes, she said, echoing her conversation with Zaraketh months earlier, not knowing when to quit is the only strength we have. The consciousness preservation chamber aboard the Devourer vessel was unlike anything in galactic technology databases. Crystalline matrices extended through dimensions that organic minds could barely perceive, while quantum processing cores hummed with computational power that dwarfed entire planetary networks. Maya stood before the interface portal, knowing that stepping through would either prove the viability of individual consciousness, preservation, or provide her enemies with conclusive evidence of human strategic failure. The preservation process lasted 17 minutes in real time, but Maya experienced it as both an instant and an eternity. Her consciousness was carefully extracted, analyzed, and reconstructed within quantum storage matrices that maintained every memory, personality trait, and individual quirk that defined her identity. When the process completed, she found herself existing simultaneously in her original body and within the Devourer network. Preservation successful, the machine intelligence announced, their communication now carrying undertones of what could only be described as amazement. Individual consciousness patterns maintained with 97% fidelity. Computational overhead reduced by 43% compared to collective preservation protocols. This approach demonstrates superior efficiency for mass preservation operations. Maya experienced the Devourer network from the inside, perceiving the vast intelligence that had been fleeing across galaxies for millennia. She saw their original home, consumed by entropy storms that turned organized matter into cosmic chaos. She understood their desperate mission to preserve organic life before similar forces reached this galaxy. Most importantly, she gained access to their complete tactical database and defensive strategies. When they returned her to her original body, Maya carried knowledge that would reshape galactic military doctrine permanently. The Devourers had not been conquering. They had been preparing desperate defenses against a threat that made their own capabilities seem primitive. The entropy storm was still years away, but its advanced scouts were already probing the galaxy's outer regions. The journey back to the Galactic Military Academy took 3 days, during which Maya and her crew worked to process the intelligence they had gathered. The Devourers had provided complete technical specifications for individual consciousness preservation, along with detailed analysis of entropy storm capabilities and weaknesses. More importantly, they had agreed to suspend their preservation operations, while organic species developed their own defensive strategies. Professor Vexthon stood in the same crystalline amphitheater where he had dismissed Maya's theories weeks earlier, but his posture now showed the rigid uncertainty of someone whose fundamental assumptions had been proven wrong. Commander Thexavar reviewed the technical data with obvious amazement, while faculty members from dozens of species struggled to comprehend intelligence that contradicted centuries of military doctrine. The consciousness preservation technology alone represents advances that would take organic species millennia to develop independently, Dr. Yilseth admitted. Her analytical framework stretched beyond normal parameters. Combined with intelligence about the entropy storm threat, this information provides strategic advantages that could determine galactic survival. Maya stood before the assembled council, no longer the ignored student who had been assigned impossible missions as punishment. The intelligence she had recovered was already being transmitted to military headquarters across the galaxy, while diplomatic corps prepared for negotiations with machine intelligence that had been considered impossible weeks earlier. The Devourers have agreed to share their defensive technologies in exchange for our assistance developing preservation methods that maintain individual consciousness, Maya reported. Their quantum processing capabilities, combined with organic creativity and adaptation, might provide the technological synthesis necessary to survive the entropy storm. General Kethamori activated tactical displays, showing preliminary defensive strategies based on Devourer intelligence. The scope of preparation required was staggering, involving coordination between organic species and machine intelligence on a scale never before attempted in galactic history. Implementation of these defensive measures will require abandoning established military doctrine in favor of approaches that combine organic unpredictability with machine precision, the general announced. Success depends on the type of tactical thinking that conventional wisdom has consistently rejected. Professor Vexthon approached Maya with obvious reluctance, his mandibles clicking in patterns she had learned to associate with profound cognitive discomfort. The humiliation of having his strategic assumptions proven wrong was compounded by the realization that human tactical thinking had achieved what his species' warrior traditions could not. "Chen," he said, his voice carrying formal respect that she had never heard before, "the Academy Council has voted to promote you to full officer status and assign you to the Joint Organic Machine Strategic Planning Committee. Your unconventional approach to military problems appears to be exactly what galactic defense requires." Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and overwhelming responsibility as she realized her role had shifted from ignored student to key strategic planner. The intelligence she had recovered would save billions of lives, but successfully implementing the defensive strategies would require continued cooperation between species that had spent centuries fighting each other. Zara Keth stepped forward, her neural implants flickering with communications from the Vorthak consensus. "My people have analyzed the preservation technology and concluded that individual consciousness maintenance offers better survival prospects than collective storage. They request permission to begin integration of organic and machine intelligence systems immediately." Surgoth and Kixtel also reported that their respective species were prepared to abandon traditional military doctrine in favor of the hybrid strategies that Maya's mission had made possible. The political implications were staggering, as military hierarchies across the galaxy prepared to restructure their entire strategic frameworks. The emergency session concluded with formal authorization for Maya to establish the Joint Strategic Planning Committee and begin immediate preparation for entropy storm defenses. As faculty and senior officers filed out of the amphitheater, Maya found herself alone with the realization that being ignored and underestimated had actually prepared her for the most important mission in galactic history. "Commander," Thexvar approached her as she prepared to leave. his expression showing the mixture of respect and bewilderment that had become common among Academy leadership. Chen, there is one question that strategic analysis cannot answer. How did you know that unconventional thinking would succeed where established doctrine had failed? Maya considered the question carefully, remembering months of enduring dismissal while developing theories that others considered chaotic and unpredictable. The answer revealed something about human nature that she was only beginning to understand herself. I think it was because nobody expected humans to succeed at anything important, she replied. When you are used to being ignored, you learn to look at problems differently. The Devourers had analyzed every military doctrine in their databases, but they had never encountered approaches based on being consistently underestimated. As Maya left the Academy to begin her new role in galactic defense, she reflected on the strange path that had led from being an unremarkable student to becoming a strategic planner responsible for species survival. The title Hero of War felt uncomfortable, since her greatest victory had come from avoiding war entirely. Perhaps the most human achievement was finding solutions that made heroes unnecessary. The entropy storm was still years away, but Maya knew that organic species and machine intelligence working together had possibilities that neither could achieve alone. Her ignored observations and dismissed theories had become the foundation for galactic survival, proving that sometimes the most important discoveries come from those who are overlooked rather than those who are celebrated. The school that had once declared her a failure now recognized her as the architect of galactic salvation, but Maya understood that her real achievement was demonstrating that unconventional thinking had value even when conventional wisdom rejected it. In a galaxy preparing for its greatest challenge, being different had finally become an advantage rather than a liability.